My name is Vijay Ramanathan or Vegas Kjaro, and I'm here to share my paper on uh, for interdisciplinary foundations for vibrant longevity, part one, 2025 summer. What is the life expectancy of an immortal American, and what frequency is immortality? Is the question we're going to be asking ourselves, kind of go on a riddle, if you will. We'll be looking at immortality in the sense of vibrant longevity, and in what way do we understand that? Um, so, for all the psychology of optimal experience is basically the idea that uh, you know um, that life is a constant um, uninterrupted flow that we can achieve in which we don't have to be asking the question, do you wish you'd be doing something else? A lot of times the interruption of flow in our lives is the question of work and the separation of our work lives from our passion lives, the passion um, from our real life, the real life from our work life and how we can. And the author asks the question, do you wish you'd been doing something else? And the extent to which a person answers this with a no is generally a reliable indication to how motivated he or she is in the moment. And regardless of whether or not we're in a flow or not, motivation is low at work. When we perceived, even when the flow was high at work, many people will feel like the quality experience is low. Um, because work is even if work is enjoyable, they cannot stand high levels of challenge all the time. But the book goes into flow, psychology of optimal experience, goes into how we can achieve flow in many things in our lives, whether it be in music or the flow of thought or the body in flow, and enjoy enjoyment in many different areas of our lives when we're in flow. Um, and the body gets submerged, the mind gets submerged into the body, which achieves this kind of homeostasis, and we're able to look at all things in a kind of uninterrupted challenge. But there's only so much challenge we can take at any given time, and we have to optimize these flow states so we can continue on. And the meme here asks the question: after the accident, I was unable to walk for 3 years, and the judge asks, "What accident?" And he says my birth, which is a very funny way of saying that our lives are interrupted from their rebirth experience and that we have to now redirect our energies to new challenges and new obstacles, which we'll get into later on. Um, so The Myth and Normal by Gabor Mate is another book that talks about how um, trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture. The Myth and Normal trauma, illness, and healing in toxic culture. And he is understanding that our biologies and our biological health, as well as our mental health, is being influenced by various factors in our environment, um, and that all of our choices about our maintenance of our health are influenced by cultural norms. So he goes into how who are really human nature, human needs. So these human needs, these human natures, human needs are being influenced by the norms of the industry, the healthcare industry. It's been transformative for me to realize that my own mental health issues carry genuine meanings that arose from my whole life and my family of origin and particular historical context. So when he grew up understanding may not be the norms for the healthcare industry. I found it to be the same to be true universally, no matter where I outlook, whose mental illness I consider, or indeed how extreme the condition happens to be. If anything, the more flagrant ones are easier to decode. When examined, the manifestation of all the various mental health diagnoses have meaning, from depression through what's called schizophrenia to attention deficit disorder, from troubled eating to self-cutting. And you have the illusion of like, well, I'm going to choose to do something else, but also we all are kind of subject to the norms of our culture. And Gabor Mate might have, you know, kind of talks about people who take extreme measures to ensure their freedom of choice within the healthcare industry. But many times you're unable to do that, and many failures sometimes result. And it's just a question of maintaining that discipline and maintaining that focus that I know what I need, and I'm going to ask and demand what I need, regardless of the slaughterhouse. I'm gonna go and continue to press forward. I'm not gonna be a commodity in this healthcare industry. I'm continuing to advocate for myself, advocate for my right for best care possible for me. That these genuine messages, genuine meanings come arose from my life, my family of origin, in a particular historical context. So now, what is the ultimate goal here? Is to realize that we are infinite beings, that we're infinite beings of light. That the basis of our imputation is one of um, uh, infinite beings of light. So in Buddhism, we talk about the base of imputation. What is the base of imputation of the I? What is the self here? In the previous slide, we talked about these genuine meanings arose in my life, my origin, family of origin, in particular historical context. But what is that self that's coming up? The self does not exist as a mere label or name, is imputed by conceptual thought. The thinking mind reverts to the self from the moment to moment, such that it in no ways resembles the stable, coherent self it is believed to be. We generally impute our body, my body, on ever-changing bits of our body and mental activity. Therefore, our sense of self is changing all the time, depending on what we are basing it on. If we are identifying with grateful feelings on Monday, by Tuesday we're anxious, and then by Wednesday fast forward, rewind, we're trying to get back to that self. So there's fictions. There's no self beyond the thoughts or version of themselves. So can we imagine ourselves enlightened? Is the question. And becoming supernatural. Um, he talks about this in terms of the quantum field and being supernatural. No more Newtonian physics, where it's like cause and effect, which is dominated by karma, but rather quantum physics, which is basically like we're going into the result. We're to bringing a little of the result into the effect into the cause. We're inviting the effect into the cause. I want to be enlightened, therefore I'm enlightened right now. I'm going to imagine myself enlightened, and I'm going to proceed from that vantage point. Very aligned with becoming supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is a Mahayana practice, inviting the effect into the process, the end result into the process, where we really, go quantum with our psyche, and we're like, I'm enlightened, I'm a pure being, and I'm going to impute that on myself. And this audio clip about the base of imputation. If we put the base of imputation of pure self, a pure mind, then we can move from there. Many Lives, Many Masters talks a little bit about how a client, Brian L. Weiss, um, underwent this strange, spectacular drama that was unfolding in her hypnosis, unbeknownst to the rest of the world in a quiet, dimly lit office. And he wanted to verify this information rigorously, used after the past 15 years in his research to evaluate the most unusual material emerged from Catherine's lips. And he really becomes a question between, peer reviewed and the truth. And sometimes we have to just pursue the truth where it brings us and question whether or not, and in what way does this client exhibit that she's traumatized when he comes to Brian L. Weiss. She's deeply traumatized, and that immortality really is a question of like the choices between in this meme. It shows immortality, the question of recovery for trauma from each life and death. That death is actually a pause where we recover from all the traumas of that past life. And to choose between the two is erroneous. Um, so returning to becoming supernatural, how common people are doing the uncommon. Uh, you know, uh, Now it's time for us to take your attention off your body, the environment, and time to become nobody, nothing, no one, nowhere, in no time. To become pure consciousness, to unfold as an awareness in this infinite black space, an endless field where all things are possible, all possibilities exist. So I mean, sure, I mean we could have, it reminds me of the Einstein meme where, 100 people are saying, "Oh, it's not right," but if one person is able to testify that it worked and saved their life, I think that's all we really need to hear. We don't need to hear 100 people saying it's not right. We need to hear one person, you, the reader, the listener, verifying for themselves, just as the Kalamata Sutra talks about. Buddha said, "Oh, take what you need and test it out for yourself. Test it out." Buddha's implores his disciples to test it out for themselves and see how it works for them. And if it works for them, that's all really you need to test. You don't, it doesn't need to work for everyone. It just needs to work for you. So the basic imputation again is one of a pure mind. And the scientific mind does not hesitate to explain these reports as emanations from the unconscious. This is from Carl Jung's Confrontation with the Unconscious. So when we go deep into our own minds, go deep into and find that sacred space in our mind, we're also finding things in our conscious that have archetypal contents. And whether the thing is given subjectively or objectively, the fact remains is this. What is this? The fact remains is that we're uncovering something out of the depths of our conscious, our subconscious. And what is it? And that's the question to investigate. Um, we don't need to necessarily be following best practices in our own life, peer-reviewed sources or figuring out jumping through hoops. This meme it talks about how the cat says, "How does that work for you? I'm not interested in jumping through your hoops. I'm not a dog." And I created this meme, and I think like the idea is like there's a time and place for peer-reviewed sources, and there's a time and place for us to test out these theories ourselves and really understand how they're affecting our lives and qualitatively create a record of how it helps all people's lives or many people's lives and who is it contraindicated for. So now here we have the Zen searching for an object, searching for the ox, which is our mind, searching for our mind, searching for our eye imputation, in search of the ox, discovery of the footprints, perceiving the ox, catching the ox, taming the ox, riding the ox transcended, both oxes self transcended, returning to source, and returning to society. So once we integrate in the new I, when we have both ox and self transcended, then we have the return to source, reaching the source and being able to be an immortal. That it doesn't matter whether or not we die or not, because we're going to be remembered forever. And this confrontation with the unconscious, the mere use of words is futile when you do not know what they stand for. They gain life and meaning only when you try to take into account its numinosity, their relationship to the living individual. Only then do you begin to understand that their names mean very little, whereas the way they are related to you is all important. So the process of individuation, but to me, it seems certain that Jung's discovery of the process of individuation is a fact that future generations will have to take into account if they want to avoid drifting into stagnant or even regressive outlook. So you have the wheels of samsara here, all the different aspects of our possible experience, the godly realms and the demon realms and the demigod realms and the hell being realms. These are ways in which we can relate with our experience as a human being, as well as possibly as a non-human being, whether it be an animal or anything else. We don't know the limits of this experience. So now this guy is observing injustices or legitimate grievances of the power establishment in this meme in some Jurassic Park, where he says, "See, nobody read your book." I mean, of course, the point is not to write a book. The point is to explore consciousness. Um, so when it comes to the social dynamics, the social experience, how many was the lifespan of a immortal American? Um, Individuals become mere function in society where society enveloped by the state is turned into quasi-animate personality and usurps the life-carrying role of the individual. So can we even have a democracy, or do we have to have like a kind of a quasi-dictatorship where a personality takes over and guides us and tells us the way things are. A guru like guide or guru in the Buddhist traditions. We always listen to the wise one. But can all people follow their own source, follow their own, connect to their own source, connect to their own inner meaning, and what would that look like? Buddhist teachers be like, enlightenment is possible. And when you ask for a specific example, we say all people enlighten their own way. But then how is that possible if they're not conforming to a rigid standard of enlightenment? How can all people be enlightened in their own way? We want to ask. And can we all be immortal in our own way? Even if our bodies are discarded, um, can our life force continue on, or are we all copies of each other? Are we all kind of copying the toxicity of the virtue? Or are we just following the leader of the healthcare norms rather than our own guide, our own inner guide? Um, and when it comes to white supremacy and neo-Nazism, these kinds of things, my brother's hands, racialized trauma and pathways defending our own bodies and hearts. Americans have lived under the strange and contradictory delusion that black bodies are incredibly strong and frightening, impervious to pain, but white bodies are extremely weak and vulnerable, especially to black bodies, um, especially that white bodies are extremely vulnerable to black bodies. So it's the job of black bodies to care for white bodies. So, when it comes to like maintaining our vitality, we're always trying to fight against something. There's always something we're trying to fight against. And we're saying, even though we say, in the white supremacy thing, like, oh, white people are supreme or whatever it is, they're still weak as well, because they're not able to defend themselves. According to this Minakin treatise, he exposes that racialized trauma, shows the fragility of white bodies rather than their supremacy. That white supremacy actually exposes the fragility of white bodies. Um, so then, therefore, we would think about fighting against white supremacy. We acknowledge that all bodies have vulnerability, but if we get into the depths of our inner knowing, we all human beings, we're all kind of aspects of the light, and we get into that deep, deep inner knowing. Then we want to ask ourselves: do we want to live forever young, or do we want to be remembered for all time? And what forces are working against us? So in this meaning, it says conventional appearances dissolve as ultimate truth appears in my field of awareness is empowerment. But then he gets contradicted. He says, we invented the psychosis spectrum for threats like you. What is the ultimate wish then that doesn't threaten the establishment? So you have like so the books that I was citing, flow, kind of understanding how we can move through flow, become supernatural, and really focus on quantum realm states and contradict the norms of our society. Dive deep into the unconscious and understand that we go through bardos, not just in between lives, but in within life, where we're maturing and we're understanding, and that's all based on the base of amputation, which is connected to our racial and cultural identities, which is connected to politics, and then it's not a question of fighting off um, the norms, but rather individuating and realizing that we have many lives, many masters, and we are here. We are here in order to really understand and promote the human experience. Thank you.